Hi there. Thank you for taking some time to join us. My name is Travis Payton. I'm an account manager here with Circular Action Alliance. Today, I'll be going through our introduction for EPR for paper and packaging laws in the US. If you are new to the term EPR or to Circular Action Alliance as an organization, you're in the right spot. This is the first of a high-level series of overviews for companies that may have EPR obligations. And hopefully this will help you become familiar with EPR laws, what those laws contain, and what the specific requirements mean for your organization. So a quick legal disclaimer, CAA is not a law firm. We cannot provide legal advice. A lot of what we're going to discuss today touches on regulatory requirements. CAA is here to provide education and guidance. But ultimately, whether your company is subject to these laws is a determination that you and your legal counsel will need to make. Also, just a quick note, CAA is subject to all federal, state, and international antitrust laws, so we will not be discussing any of the topics you see here on the right-hand side of the screen. All right, and as a quick reminder, like I said, this is the first in a three-part series of onboarding, so today's call will focus on an overview of EPR and CAA as an organization. We'll wrap up with some next steps for producers. The deeper dives on registration and fees are covered in the 102 and 103 sessions. And then we've got more producer-specific reporting events for registered producers. Talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So on the agenda today, we'll walk through EPR, what is it at a high level, talk about Circular Action Alliance, our founding and our mission. Then we'll look at EPR requirements across the states. Next, we'll provide some updates from the states where CAA is active. And finally, we'll discuss registration and look at next steps for producers. All right, so what is EPR? So extended producer responsibility, conceptually, is a policy approach that shifts financial responsibility for recycling or end-of-life management of a product to the company that produced that material. We have several EPR programs. You may not know them by that name, but in the US, we do similar programs for things like mattresses and paint. However, EPR for paper and packaging is new to the United States. So we do have experience with these programs in places like Canada, who've been running EPR for packaging for a number of years. So we're definitely drawing on that knowledge to help build out these US programs. But more broadly, these laws require producers, which is generally the brand owner of a product, to either partially or fully fund the collection, sortation, and processing of paper, packaging, and packaging-like items that they supply into these states. So once producers are identified, they then fund the cost to manage the end-of-life process for their material by paying fees or dues, and these are designed to incentivize design choices that improve recyclability or minimize waste or improve other environmental outcomes. So that incentive is managed through what's called an eco-modulation. So examples of eco-modulation factors would include increasing the use of recycled content or switching to reusable packaging. These are the types of choices that would then result in lowered fees. So moving on to a PRO. A producer responsibility organization, or PRO as we'll call it, is a producer-led nonprofit that helps producers collectively to meet their EPR obligations. So generally speaking, a PRO has two primary responsibilities. The first is to work with producers to build out a compliance infrastructure. So that would include things like a registration system, reporting tools, fee schedules, um, and then on the other hand, the PRO also works with state regulatory agencies, also the waste and recycling sector, and local governments to develop what's called a program plan. The program plan is a holistic plan that outlines how the pro, on behalf of producers, will meet the requirements of the EPR laws. So once the program plan is approved by the state regulatory agencies, the program plan is then implemented by the pro using funding from the obligated producers. And a quick note to throw in here on terminology. Um, some states, such as Maine, will refer to a pro as their stewardship organization, but generally, in the context of US EPR laws, stewardship organization and producer responsibility organization are generally the same thing. So now let's look at the various laws across the states. So far, 5 states have passed EPR laws for paper and packaging. As you can see on the map, this includes California, Oregon, Colorado, Minnesota, and Maine. Several of the other states have taken first steps towards EPR, but have not yet passed a full law. So you'll see here Illinois and Maryland are in the process of conducting a needs assessment, which will be used to inform the potential future laws in those states. So as indicated on the map, CAA is currently the approved pro for Colorado and California. The Oregon law is a little different in that it does allow the opportunity for multiple pros to participate, but currently CAA is the only active pro in Oregon. In Minnesota, CAA has submitted our application to become the pro to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency. They're currently reviewing it. We don't have a precise timeline for when that selection will be made, however. And then Maine is a little bit earlier in their EPR journey, and as of yet has not selected a pro. Finally, in Maryland, CAA does have a seat on the State Advisory Council that'll be making recommendations on a future EPR law. All right, so who is CAA? We are a 501c3 nonprofit. We're the first and so far only pro to be approved in a paper and packaging EPR state. We're funded by the 20 companies you see on the right-hand side of your screen, focused primarily in the food, beverage, consumer packaged goods, and retail industries. And as mentioned on the previous slide, we are currently active in California, Colorado, and Oregon, and providing an advisory role in Maryland. So let's talk a little bit about our mission. CAA's mission is to help producers comply with EPR laws and to provide a single point of compliance rather than having individual pros for every state. Our goal is to create a single national portal, a single national reporting system for producers, and to try and harmonize in as much as possible the various laws. At the same time, we recognize that each state has specific operational needs, so we have set up local subsidiary entities that will implement the program plan in each state. These teams will ensure that we meet all the state-specific program requirements, that we're fully leveraging existing infrastructure, and collaborating with all interest holders to successfully implement the EPR laws. All right, so let's look at some of the specifics in each state. As you can see, each state program varies slightly in scope. In the covered materials column, you'll notice all 5 states include product packaging within the scope of their program. The definition of packaging, however, does vary slightly from state to state, so it is important to refer to each state's definition so you can be clear on whether your materials are considered covered. 4 out of the 5 states explicitly include food serviceware in their covered materials. Maine doesn't explicitly define food serviceware. However, some of their food serviceware could meet the definition of packaging. So again, this is where it becomes very important to review each program's material definitions. And we do have some helpful guidance on our website. We'll talk more about that here at the end of the presentation. 3 of the 5 states also include printed or writing paper. So that's Oregon, Colorado, and Minnesota. This is a pretty significant expansion beyond just packaging because this would now start to include things like printer paper, flyers, catalogs, paper coupons, and the like. And moving from covered materials over to sectors, you'll see that all 5 states include end consumers or retail consumer facing packaging. However, California and Oregon also include business to business packaging. So keep in mind that that would then include business to business paper in Oregon as well. The Colorado law may include some business to business packaging, but we're still working on the with the state regulator to get further clarification on that. And then you'll see uh, various states clarify whether EPR law mandates partial or complete funding of their recycling system. All right, so let's quickly look at the producer obligations across each of these states. So you'll see that all 5 states require producers to join an approved pro and to collect and report data, pay fees or dues, and based on the data that you report, and then potentially redesign materials and delivery methods. 2 states, California and Maine, also include a 25% source reduction plan for the use of plastics. And then you'll see Minnesota and California both have future requirements that all materials, all packaging materials, be either recyclable or compostable by 2032. So, some notes on those last 2 additional compliance obligations. The mandate that all packaging be recyclable or compostable is an individual compliance obligation. So, this means it'll apply to all producers and all material. The plastic source reduction, however, is an industry-wide mandate. That means producers collectively must reduce their use of plastics by 25%, not individually. So this is an initiative that CAA as the pro will work to implement. All producers will have to have a reduction plan, but they don't have to, each producer does not have to reduce by the same amount. So CAA will coordinate to get the entire producer industry to 25%. All right, so let's look at some state updates. In Colorado, CAA is preparing the first program plan following an extensive consultation process due to be submitted to the Colorado Department of Public Health and Environment by February 1st of 2025. And that's in line with a tentative program start date of January 1st, 2026. In California, the state regulator CalRecycle published the plastic source reduction baseline on December 31st, and that is available on their SB 54 needs assessment website. And CAA has been actively engaged with CalRecycle working on the rules making process, which is set to be finalized in January of 25. And that's to follow along with a program launch date of January 1st, 2027. Moving on to Oregon, the Department of Environmental Quality adopted final rules in November of 2024, and on December 6th, CAA submitted the third and final program plan to DEQ, and we hope to see that approved sometime here in February of 25. This is all in line with the Oregon program starting in July 1st of 2025, so that will be the first program to go live in the US. In Maine, the Board of Environmental Protection finalized the rules for Maine's EPR law on December 5th of last year. Maine is not expected to select their stewardship organization until early in 2026 sometime. Maine's program timeline is also a bit different. They will have a startup fee that producers have to pay in September of 26, but the fees specifically for packaging material won't begin until September of 2027. As mentioned earlier, in Minnesota, CAA has applied to the Minnesota Pollution Control Agency to become the pro in Minnesota. We hope to hear back on that soon. But regardless of who is selected as the pro for producers, you do need to be registered with that chosen pro by July 1st of 2025. So keep that in mind. In Maryland, CAA is serving to represent producers on the Maryland Producer Responsibility Advisory Council. The council will provide EPR recommendations following a review of the needs assessment which is expected to be delivered sometime in January. All right, and so let's talk about the next steps for producers. Here's a high-level look at the producer journey. So it starts with registration, reporting, and payment. Registration is pretty straightforward. This is simply signing up with CAA and then signing a participant producer agreement and a state addenda. We'll discuss the details of that a little bit more further on. Reporting involves gathering your supply data for the various covered materials and inputting that into our reporting portal. And then payments will be based on the amount of each covered material that you report. To support producers, CAA offers a number of tools for potential producers or anyone who's just not quite sure if they are obligated. We have these onboarding sessions we host just about every week and have recordings posted to our website. Additionally, we have a producer resource center available on our website. This is where you can find guidance documents that are designed to help producers understand the EPR laws. And then once you're registered with CAA, we have some additional guidance resources such as reporting specific guidance, access to our reporting portal that'll be going live in February. And finally, we do extra deep dive educational sessions in our for registered reporters, producers, pardon me. Um, and then as a quick side note, Colorado law did require obligated producers to be registered with CAA by October 1st of 2024. So if you think you may be obligated in Colorado, please make sure you get registered ASAP. And we do have a reporting deadline for Oregon coming up in March 31st this year. So, all right. Common question we get is, how do I know if I'm an obligated producer? So there's two primary questions an organization needs to ask to help determine if they're obligated under an EPR law. First is, are the materials associated with my product covered by the EPR law? So EPR laws for paper and packaging vary from state to state, but are generally designed to apply to single-use packaging, paper, and some disposable products. The first step in the process of identifying whether a company has obligations under the EPR law, companies should review with their attorneys the definitions of each material type to determine whether materials associated with their products placed into the Oregon or Colorado markets are subject to EPR laws. Second, companies should review their producer hierarchy, the producer hierarchy associated with the covered materials to determine if their business is the obligated producer for those materials. Only companies that are identified as the obligated producer for the material type will need to report and pay fees. Generally speaking, primary obligation is placed on the brand owner of a product. And in rare circumstances, the packaging manufacturer may become obligated, but uh, we have some helpful guidance documents available in the Producer Resource Center that was mentioned earlier, available on our website. If you do determine that your company is obligated, the next step is to register with CAA. So let's look a little bit more in depth at the registration process. There's three basic steps to registration. First is filling out the registration form on our website. The registration form will ask some basic information about your company, such as legal name, address, tax ID, a few other items. And then it'll ask you to identify a primary contact and an authorized representative. So the primary contact will be the main point of contact for CAA. So this is the person who should be receiving all of the regulatory news and updates. The authorized representative is the person who can sign contracts on behalf of your company. So these can be two different people or they can be the same person. Either way works for us. And a quick note on the registration form, we get this question a lot. It does ask for an estimated gross US revenue. We do understand a lot of privately held companies do not regularly disclose this information. And if that's the case, you're perfectly fine to put a $1 or $0 placeholder uh, to complete your registration. That won't hold anything up. So after the registration form is submitted, it'll go through a validation process and then we'll issue you the participant producer agreement or the PPA. The PPA is our basic terms of service contract between the producer and CAA. It defines the rights and obligations of both parties and covers pretty standard things such as dispute resolution and confidentiality. We do have in the second of the three onboarding trainings, we go further in depth on the PPA and state addenda. So I do want to stop here and just clarify that registering and signing the PPA does not obligate a producer to any fees or expenses. So there's no cost to being registered with CAA. Fees only begin when you start reporting covered materials for a state program. So this is why if you're unsure of your status or working with your legal team to clarify your obligations, we recommend getting registered. There's no cost, and we can always inactivate your account later if you determine you're not obligated. So once you sign the PPA, next step will be to sign the state addenda for each state where you're an obligated producer. The state addenda will outline state-specific requirements and obligations. These will come uh, in conjunction with the state program plans being approved. So the first program to go live will be Oregon, then that state addenda will be available, followed by Colorado and California later on this year. And then just a final clarification, if you believe you're obligated in multiple states, the registration form will allow you to select multiple states, so you only need to submit it one time. All right, let's talk about implementation timeline. So we touched on this briefly a few slides back, but our first major deadline is March 31st of 2025. This is when the first round of reporting for the Oregon program is due. Once that data is submitted, it'll go through validation and analysis uh, process to help calculate the 2025 fee rates, and then the program will go live in July of 2025. During the summer months of 2025, we'll be working with producers to also prep their data for the first rounds of California and Colorado reporting, which are tentatively August 31st of this year. Similarly, the California and Colorado data will be reviewed and analyzed to set initial fee schedules, and the Colorado program will launch in January of 26 and California a year later in 2027. So next steps. These are all topics we've touched on earlier, but wanted to reiterate. The Colorado law did require registration by October 1st of 2024, and CAA is required to provide a list of registered producers to each of the state regulatory agencies. So each of the state laws do have enforcement mechanisms, so regulators can take enforcement actions against non-compliant producers. Registering with CAA in all states where you're obligated gives you access to regulatory updates and educational resources to support data preparation and reporting. Registering and reporting data helps CAA to set accurate and fair fee schedules and to reduce free riders in our systems. The registration form is available on the CAA website. And again, there is no fee to register with CAA, and the registration can be amended or canceled at any time as needed. So ways to stay engaged. Obviously, the first thing to do if you believe you might be obligated under one of these laws is to get registered with us. But if you're still looking for some more information, visit the Producer Resource Center on our website. It's got a number of great guidance documents and FAQs. You can also sign up for our monthly newsletter that'll keep you up to date on the various state programs and let you know when we publish new tools and resources. And then we also have a direct producer support email at producer.support@circularaction.org. You can send us questions or uh, specific business scenarios if you're not quite sure whether your business qualifies as an obligated producer, we're happy to take a look and help guide you on that. And then finally, as we mentioned earlier, we have multiple onboarding sessions. So on our events page on our website, you can sign up for those, or you can scan the QR code here. And the next two will cover a more detailed look at the registration and agreement. So that would be the PPA and state addenda that were mentioned earlier. And then we'll have a high level review of budgeting and EPR fee settings as well. So thank you for taking some time to watch this, and we look forward to helping you along through your EPR journey. Have a good day.